Over the last 10 years, I've gone through more than 20 fat loss phases, and through all that trial and error, I've discovered 12 cheat codes that make it effortless to stay in a calorie deficit. These are the same cheat codes that help me go from overweight and struggling to staying lean year-round with ease, and they're the exact strategies I use with my clients over 40 to help them drop stubborn belly fat and get lean fast. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through all 12 so you can stop feeling ashamed to take your shirt off and finally feel proud of what you see in the mirror. The first cheat code to staying in a calorie deficit is to eat dessert every single day. And yes, I'm being completely serious right now. This completely flies in the face of conventional wisdom, and most people will not tell you this, but most people also don't understand fat loss. Fat loss is all about behavioral change. It's all about finding the most enjoyable way to eat in a calorie deficit every single day. And one of the best ways to do that is to save the last 20% of your calories each day for dessert. Because what this does is it makes you feel like you're not even dieting. It makes hitting the deficit feel completely effortless because you don't feel like you're being restricted, and it satisfies your cravings. It satisfies the sweet tooth that you might have. So funny story, my dad, who is 53 years old, lost about 30 pounds of body fat in 90 days. And in that process, he ate a big bowl of ice cream every single night, without fail. Every single day he ate that big bowl of ice cream. And that was a big key to him being able to lose that fat because it made the diet effortless. It made it feel like he wasn't even dieting to begin with, because he loves ice cream. And I basically told him, like, because, you know, when he was first starting out, he's like, Rio, like, I don't think I can go without my ice cream. I don't think I can go without these different foods. And I was like, dude, you don't have to cut them out. Let's just make the numbers make sense, right? So we fit in that ice cream every single night. We took 20% of his daily calories and we allocated that towards the ice cream every single night. And it was a big key to helping him lose that weight. And personally, I eat a Snickers bar every single night. Because what it does, again, it makes me feel like I'm not even dieting, and it satisfies my sweet tooth, and I go to bed feeling satisfied. So saving the last 20% of your calories each day for a dessert, whether that's cookies or chocolate or ice cream or whatever you want to fit in, makes a huge difference in your ability to sustain the calorie deficit. Now, the second cheat code is to keep your activity levels low. And this might go against everything that you've been told about fat loss, because most people think that cardio and staying active is like the holy grail of fat loss, but that's not true at all. Because if you're too active, you'll spike your hunger, which will make it more likely for you to eat more calories. Whereas if you keep your activity levels low, you will keep your appetite low, and therefore you will consume fewer calories. I know, mind-blowing, right? It's actually just common sense. So if you're trying to lose weight, you want to avoid intensive cardio and frequent gym sessions. This will make it way easier for you to sustain the calorie deficit on a consistent basis. What I do when I'm getting my leanest, and what I have my clients do, is we focus on walking every single day and strength training only twice per week. This keeps your appetite low and makes it easier for you to hit the calorie deficit. The next cheat code is to backload your calories. Now, the ultimate goal when it comes to fat loss is to go to bed feeling full and satisfied every single night while also still being in the calorie deficit. If you can achieve that, you've won fat loss. It's game over. You're gonna lose weight so easily. And from my experience, the only way to really do that is to save most of your calories for later in the day and to eat most of your food in the evening. Because pushing your food later into the day gives you freedom to eat big meals. And I don't know about you, but personally, small meals do nothing for me. As someone with a really big appetite, I have to eat big meals in order to get full. I cannot eat like 5 tiny meals spread throughout the day. It doesn't work for me at all. In order for me to get full and satisfied, I have to eat big and satisfying meals. And the only way to really do that while still being in a deficit by the end of the day is to create a buffer. Is to save most of your food for a smaller eating window. So the whole magic of this is that if you save most of your calories for later in the day, it creates an illusion of abundance while you're also still in a deficit. Because, for example, let's say you have to do 2,500 calories every single day in order to lean down. Well, if you spread 2,500 calories throughout the day, maybe through 4 or 5 meals, that's not gonna feel like very much food. But if you just don't eat any calories for half the day and you save that 2,500 calories for, the afternoon and the evening, that's gonna feel like a ton of food, and that's gonna give you a lot of freedom because you've saved those calories for a more condensed eating window. So this is one of the biggest cheat codes to being able to sustain a calorie deficit. This is what makes eating in a calorie deficit really, really easy, because you go to bed feeling satisfied every single night because you ate most of your food, before you're going to bed. And a lot of people think that like eating in the evening is bad or whatever, but that's complete bullshit, guys. Because ultimately, the goal of fat loss is just to be in a calorie deficit. If you're in a calorie deficit by the end of the day, you will lose weight. It doesn't matter when you eat your food. What matters is that you go to bed feeling full and satisfied while still being in a deficit. And the best way to do that, from my experience, is to save most of your calories for the evening. By the way, guys, just to pause the video for a second, if you want my personal help putting this into action so you can lose your gut, feel proud of what you see in the mirror, and get your confidence and masculinity back, click the link in my description below and book a free call with me. On the call, we'll break down where you are now, what's keeping you stuck, and map out a clear plan to get you where you want to be. There's no pressure whatsoever. It's just a real conversation to see if I can help. And whether you join or not, you'll walk away with real clarity and a path forward. The next cheat code is to not cut out your favorite foods. So if you cut out your favorite foods from your diet plan, the diet will fail. That is a guarantee, because cutting things out that you enjoy makes your diet, by definition, unsustainable. So oftentimes with my clients, we do not overhaul their entire diets. We tend to just find out what foods they like, what meals they gravitate towards that they enjoy, that keep them full and satisfied, and then we just make the numbers make sense. We just take those meals, those foods that they already enjoy, and we fit it into a certain calorie intake. So to bring back the previous example of my father, who lost 30 pounds in 90 days at age 53, he ate a big bowl of ice cream every single night before bed. Well, we didn't change pretty much anything about what he ate. We kept his diet pretty much exactly the same. We had him eat the foods that he would eat anyway, regardless of if he was dieting or not, and we just made the numbers make sense. And there's a lot of magic in that, because what it does is it makes the transition very easy. Because if you're trying to commit to some diet plan, you have to throw everything that you enjoy out the window, and you have to change everything about what you're doing. It's going to be very hard to sustain that. But if you can actually change very little and just make the numbers make sense, it'll be so much easier for you to stick to your diet. Because guess what? It's not going to feel like a diet. It's going to feel like you're doing the same things that you're currently doing, but you're making the numbers make sense. You're making sure that you're actually in a deficit. So that was the magic for my dad. We didn't change very much at all about what he ate. We changed a few different things like the structure of his diet plan and all that, but he ate the same foods that he would eat anyway. And that's what made him able to stick to the deficit. Now, the next cheat code is to follow a uniform eating diet. And what that basically means is that you want to find 2 to 3 meals that are like your go-to meals that you really love, and just repeat them every single day. Me and my clients get lean the fastest when we eat the same thing every single day. And I know this sounds crazy, but let me explain. So when it comes to fat loss, your priority is obviously to hit the calorie deficit. That is what drives fat loss. Now, there are 2 big obstacles in the way of most people hitting that calorie deficit. And those 2 things are tracking and adherence. These are the 2 big obstacles in the way of fat loss for most people. And if you can solve these, fat loss becomes really easy. All tracking is just, are you actually hitting the right calorie intake? Are you accurately tracking your calories? So if you need to hit 2,500 calories every single day in order to lean down, are you actually hitting that number, or are you eating like 4,000 calories, So that's tracking. Adherence is just your ability to stick to the calorie deficit from Monday to Sunday every single week. So if you solve these 2 things, fat loss becomes incredibly easy. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because uniform eating solves both of these things. It solves tracking and adherence. As far as adherence, the reason why uniform eating is so powerful is because it removes decision fatigue. You don't have to think about what you're going to eat every single day. That makes it so much easier to stick to your diet plan, because it's just automatic. You're just doing things on autopilot. You don't even have to think about what you're going to eat. That makes it so much easier to stick to your diet. And then as far as tracking, if you're eating the same meals every single day, you know how many calories are in those meals. You know exactly what that looks like. You might not even have to pull out the weighing scale or even track it at all to know how many calories is in that meal, because you eat it every single day. So basically, the power of uniform eating is just in knowing that your diet is dialed in without having to think about it. Because if you're eating different shit every single day, you're constantly having to pull out your tracking software and like find these different meals and these different ingredients. It just becomes so complicated and makes it so much harder to adhere to your diet plan, and it makes your tracking inaccurate because it becomes too complicated. So you might think that eating the same meals every single day is restrictive, but it's actually the most freeing thing that you can do. If you can just automate your eating to where you get up every single day and you know exactly what meals you're eating because they're the same ones you ate yesterday and the day before, it makes your life so much more simple, man. And you can just make sure that your diet is dialed in. Eat the meals that, fit into the calorie intake that you're trying to hit every single day, and just repeat them every single day. It's going to make your life so much easier, and it's ultimately going to make it much easier for you to sustain the calorie deficit on a daily basis. The next cheat code to staying in a calorie deficit is to eat in a small to moderate size deficit. Now, the reason why this is a cheat code is because big calorie deficits that are very aggressive are much less sustainable. They're way harder to stick to because they make you very hungry. Because the bigger the deficit, the more hunger you're going to experience because you're essentially starving yourself, right? So going slower is actually way faster. The long road is the fast road when it comes to fat loss because you screw up your diet way less often because you're not hungry all the time, And not only that, but you'll be way more likely to maintain your results when the diet is done because you didn't force yourself down to that body fat percentage. You didn't starve your way there. You took it slow and you actually, you weren't hungry throughout the process. And that makes you much more likely to maintain your results once the diet is done. Now, there's one exception to this, which is that if you're obese, you can be more aggressive with your calorie deficit. In fact, I would actually recommend it because you're not going to experience any of those negative side effects of like being really hungry, screwing up your diet more, being less likely to sustain your results. It's really when you have like maybe 10 to 20 pounds of fat to lose that you want to take it slow. If you have like 30 plus pounds to lose, you can go more aggressive with your calorie deficit. But like most times, it's just better to take it slow, man. This is something that I've learned with experience because when I started out, I went so aggressive with my calorie deficits and it led to just so many downsides, I lost muscle and strength. I was hungry all the time, so I was constantly screwing up my diet. I developed binge eating issues and I constantly was rebounding. I'd get to my goal body fat percentage and then I just fly back to my old weight again because I starved my way there. So the more sophisticated way to go about fat loss is to take it slower because that's actually faster in the long run. The next cheat code to staying in a calorie deficit is to change your relationship with hunger. So you don't want to resist the calorie deficit. Mild hunger is inevitable at times. Too many people see it, they experience a little bit of hunger and they see it as a really bad thing and it causes them to eat more food. But guys, you have to reframe reality a little bit here and understand that if you're trying to lose fat, your body is actively eating itself. It is consuming itself for energy. It's not supposed to always feel comfortable. This was a big mindset shift for me because I used to experience hunger at times and I would see it as a bad thing and I have this bad relationship with hunger and I would start eating more food and I'd take myself out of the deficit. But you have to understand that mild hunger is just inevitable at times. You actually want to flip this switch and see hunger as a sign of progress. You want to see it as a good thing because it is a sign that you're getting leaner. So this is why cutting is very much a mindset game. Fat loss is a mindset game. You have to change your relationship. You have to reframe how you view hunger because at times it's gonna happen. Now, if you're always hungry, that's not a good thing. If you're like ravenous and you're starving all the time, that's a sign that you're going way too low in calories. But sometimes, even if you're eating in a small to moderate deficit, like we talked about, you're gonna experience some hunger at times. And it's important to be able to see that as a good thing, to be able to look at it as a sign of progress, And if you can flip this switch in your mind to where you see hunger as a sign of progress and that's not a bad thing, hitting the deficit every single day becomes really easy because you're no longer going against the flow, you're just riding it. Now, the next cheat code is easily one of the most powerful on this list, and it is to control your environment. So if you were an alcoholic, would you keep alcohol in the house? Probably not, right? It's the same thing with shitty food. So you want to keep trigger foods that you can't control out of the house at all times. So for example, if you can't resist chips and you always end up binging them, get rid of them. That's the easiest thing that you can do. Like, you don't want to ever have to rely on willpower to hit the calorie deficit. You want to make it so that it's the natural thing to do. It's the automatic thing that you just gravitate towards doing every single day. And if you have a lot of shit in your house and you're someone who can't control themselves when it comes to, junk food, keep it out of the house, man. Just keep the foods that you know are going to be required to make the meals that you need to eat that are conducive to you hitting the calorie deficit. Like, this is one of the most overlooked things. It's so simple, yet like so powerful, man. Just keep the shit that you know is going to throw you off out of your house. If you can control your environment, it's going to make everything so much easier. You want to make it as easy as possible to do the things that you need to do every single day. The next cheat code to staying in a calorie deficit is to stay busy. This is one of the easiest ways to make hitting a calorie deficit every single day effortless. Just focus on staying busy. Focus on being productive and getting things done. You'll just forget about food. And what better way is there to hit the calorie deficit every single day than to forget about food? Like, to forget that it even exists. Like, if you're not busy, you're so much more likely to overeat because you're going to be aware of your hunger. And you're also going to be thinking about food more, and you're likely going to have easier access to it because you're probably at home sitting on the couch like 10 steps away from your fridge. So like, a lot of people actually eat out of boredom. So when you're cutting, when you're in a fat loss phase, you should try and be like 10 times more productive than usual. Try to stay focused on getting things done and being busy and occupying yourself with different things, and you'll just forget about food. And that's gonna make it so much easier for you to hit the calorie deficit every day. The next cheat code is to ride the wave of momentum. So there's a metaphor that I always throw around in my videos and that I tell to my clients, and it's so powerful. And it's to picture a stationary train starting to move. So in order to get a stationary train moving, it takes monumental energy and effort. But once it's moving, the next few meters become easy, the next few meters become even easier, and at some point it's just moving on its own with very little effort, with very little energy exerted, right? That's exactly how fat loss works. So in essence, the first 2 to 3 weeks of fat loss are very tough. It's very hard to hit the deficit because you're going to experience hunger. It's not going to be very comfortable. But once you're locked in and you've pushed through those first few weeks, it gets really easy, man. What most people fail to understand is that dieting only lasts about 2 to 3 weeks. That's like a mind-shattering concept for most people, but it's so true. Dieting only lasts a few weeks and then it becomes super easy. You just have to gain that initial momentum. And once you gain that momentum and you apply a little bit of discipline for those first 2 to 3 weeks to the point where you're locked into the deficit, it becomes really easy, your hunger fades away. And it becomes super easy to hit the deficit every single day. It just becomes automatic. The next cheat code to staying in a calorie deficit is to get sufficient protein. Now, everybody on this earth pretty much is aware that protein is important for building muscle. But very few people understand that protein is actually the most satiating macronutrient. So it will keep you fuller in a calorie deficit. Now, you don't have to go overboard with protein. In fact, I think most people in the fitness industry just give ridiculous protein targets to people where they say like, you need 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's just ridiculous. You do not need that much, and you shouldn't go too high because you need to save room for carbs and fats, because carbs and fats are incredibly important for fat loss and keeping you healthy as well, right? But if you're someone like me who has a massive appetite and you find it very difficult to stay full in a calorie deficit, protein is going to be a game changer for you. Protein is going to help you control that appetite. So if you're someone with a massive appetite who struggles to stay in the deficit, keep your protein intake a little bit higher than what is optimal for muscle growth in order to help with your satiety. The next cheat code is to focus on whole foods. Now, whole foods are just single ingredient foods, things like steak, chicken, rice, potatoes, bananas, apples, and so on. Now, technically, you can get lean eating junk food. If you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose the weight. If you eat McDonald's every single day, but you're still in a deficit, you'll get lean. The issue is just that junk food is very dense in calories and not very filling, whereas whole foods are lower in calories and more filling. So you can eat more volume of food while consuming fewer calories. And that obviously is going to make it much easier for you to stay full and satisfied in a deficit. This is, by the way, why I recommend only keeping about 20% of your daily calories for something like a dessert, because you still want most of your daily calories to come from whole foods. Now, again, technically you can get lean just eating junk junk food every single day, but it's gonna be an uphill battle because you're never going to feel full and satisfied, because with junk food, you don't get very much volume of food. So you're not gonna be able to fill up very much, you know, and you'll also, by focusing on whole foods, just feel a lot better. You know, you'll have more energy and you'll be healthier. If you enjoyed this video, you're probably gonna love this video right here, where I talk about how men over 40 can lose fat so fast it feels illegal.